All right, thank you for staying with Daybreak. We're talking about matters taxes, youth and politics, and I have some guests with me in studio. Jimmy Gikwa is a youth and governance expert. Thank you for making time. CPA Robert Maina, accountant and a member of ISPAC. Thank you for making time. And Tunen Manasseh, advocate of the High Court. Let's set the stage for this conversation. The government is now seeking to raise about 178 billion shillings in a raft of proposals to amend various tax laws in what appears a change of tack in approaching revenue-raising measures previously pursued through manual finance bills. Now, National Treasury Cabinet Secretary John Mbadi says that he hopes the proposals contained in 4 far-reaching bills can be passed by Parliament as soon as possible, which Parliament hopes to do before proceeding on Christmas recess, which is early next month. The Treasury says that this will help the government bridge the budget hole occasioned by withdrawal of the Finance Bill 2024 that sought to raise over 340 billion shillings. Now, the proposals could further burden taxpayers while also offering reprieve on the recent deductions like the housing levy and shift contributions. Ayub Abdikadir sets the stage for us.
The proposals under the Tax Laws Amendment Bill 2024 seek to introduce a new tax called Significant Economic Presence Tax, payable by non-resident persons intended by the National Treasury, to replace digital service tax from 1.5% to 6%, which will have an adverse effect on owners of taxi-hailing applications and probably users of these taxis.
For a long time, they have not been paying taxes, and yet they operate in our jurisdiction. So it's not the Kenyans we are targeting in this.
Okay.
It is also in our jurisdiction, yes.
So what we are working on is there are solutions, there are technology solutions out there that would allow us to have visibility into the transactions that happen within our own IP protocol space.
The National Treasury also proposes to amend income tax with a change in the definition of the term digital marketplace to include ride-hailing services, food delivery services, freelance services and professional services, which according to the National Treasury seeks to expand the tax base to net more people on the digital platforms. And if you are planning for an early Christmas and take your loved ones to enjoy national parks, then hold on to that plan.
That person who is selling fish along the shores of Lake Victoria is paying for me to enjoy the services of going to Nairobi National Park to see wild animals.
Okay.
I should pay for it myself because I earn enough money to go to Nairobi National Park. And that person who is simply struggling along the shores of Lake Victoria should not subsidize me.
Then there are reliefs for employees regarding the Affordable Housing Act and contributions made to the Social Health Insurance Fund.
So what happens is you are earning your gross salary of 100,000. That amount, 2.75% goes to Social Health Insurance Fund. 1.5% goes to housing. You remove all that first before you start calculating pay as you earn. Okay. So it is going to give you a relief because that is what Kenyans have been crying for.
During the session with officials from the National Treasury and Parliament, members of the public raised concern over the Kenya Revenue Authority's approach to businesses and Treasury's inconsistent tax policies.
What we find is a lot of changes in tax laws, and that's really causing a bit of concern that are we really following the policies, or is there always going to be this unpredictability despite it being embedded in our national tax policy?
All these malls that you see, wakisikia KRA, what do? They close their doors, zote zinafungwa. At that particular time, maybe what does that tell you? That tells you the people who are in these businesses, either they don't have information.
Okay.
So, and now I believe KLIA have a responsibility to make sure that they ought not to assume ya kwamba tunaelewa.
The 4 bills published on the 1st of November will come up for the first reading before the National Assembly publishes notice for public participation exercise.
Especially for reducing the pressure on people's pay slips, it is very important some of these amendments are passed. On things like amnesty, it's also very important that Kenyans are able to access this amnesty as fast as possible.
All right.
Ayub Abdikadir, Citizen TV.
And Robert, I'll start with you on this because I know you did a presentation on this. What was your general observation?
Thanks, Trevor. One is that there's no doubt that this, to a large extent, almost 95%, is borrowed from the Finance Bill 2024, which was rejected. Now, one of the key things that we've noted is one, and I think I can look at it from a few thematic areas. One, from an employee perspective, there's no doubt it's a good bill because the government has realized over the past 2 years, they have imposed quite a number of taxes. They increased the pay bud from 30%. There was an additional bud of that 2.5% to 35%. We have the affordable housing levy, and now we have the contribution towards the healthcare. Now, those changes have eaten into the disposable income and the net pay that goes to these employees. So what the government is now trying to do is allow these to be deductions before you get to how much is used to determine your tax to carry. So for instance, if your affordable housing levy contribution is 10,000 per month, from your salary, that will be reduced. If your contribution towards the healthcare is 10,000 again, the same will be reduced. So there's a bit of a relief equivalent to 30% of that, or 35%, depending on the level you are in. So there's a relief. There are also quite a number of good things for employees. For instance, increasing the pension contributions from 20,000 to 30,000. So I would say for employees, they have nothing to complain. Actually, there's nothing that is, I would say, is increasing the taxes for employees in this bill. So for employees, they are covered, and it's probably just telling them pole after going through a rough time for the past 2 years. Now, the other focus area is on tax expenditure. There has been a talk that the government has been foregoing too much tax. And by tax expenditure, I mean how much does the government forego in terms of taxes that would have been collected had tax been imposed on something. So for instance, if we have an exemption on certain things, for instance, one of the most common and familiar to most people would be infrastructure boards that are out here, and they're exempt. Now, the government is proposing to introduce a level of tax on that. That was not there previously. We also seen from a VAT perspective, a lot of goods being moved from exempt to taxable, all from zero rated to exempt. And there's a whole lot of difference by moving that from one state to the other. So it seems that the government is now looking at reducing the tax expenditure by imposing VAT on these items. I mean, the most emotive issues we had last time were things like bread. They seem to be playing a bit careful this time around. We have not seen things to do with bread or milk and all that. I think they are focused on things like helicopters, among other things. In the manufacturing sector, quite a number of things will be caught. But in terms of the basic goods, they have played safe. They have not gone into those goods that will be deemed to be affecting the common monastery. So there's a whole lot of, there will be an indirect increase in cost on certain services that are being consumed. But for the basics, they seem to have played safe on that. Now, the other area that I've seen a focus on, from an income tax, I would say they are trying to get into the whole digital space. I mean, the digital economy. The government has over the years said that it's very difficult to tax people within the digital economy, because this economy, globally, we have had a lot of movement from the official traditional economy model to a place where people are making a lot of money through digital platforms and all that. So there are a lot of taxes, quite a number, significant economic presence taxes being imposed. We have had digital service tax, but what they've been doing is expanding who is being caught within that, payments that are being paid for that. So I would say it's a mix. There's a pain in terms of additional taxes and trying to cut the tax expenditure. But for employees who've been the main focus point over the past 2 years, it is a bit of a relief for them.
So when you look at the Tax Laws Amendment Bill 2024, is it a good bill or is it a bad bill?
I would say it's a fair balance. Absolutely no one wants to pay tax. In this, I mean, everyone is looking towards reducing the tax they are paying, and that's the general feeling across the world. So in terms of trying to balance, in terms of giving relief and raising additional taxes, it is a fair balance. And I would say in terms of the impact to the local economy, may not be as bad compared to what was in the Finance Bill 2024, which had outrageous proposals, such as motor vehicle tax, eco levy. This is a bit, I would say it's a bit average compared to what we had.
It's moderate, okay.
Yeah.
Jimmy, what are your thoughts on this amendment?
I think by and large, I would really back on his basically understanding on the tax part.
Yeah.
It is very interesting because government has now gone back to the people, trying to mitigate on the employees, who in the employees are also the biggest taxed or the biggest tax bracket we have, because government actually employs the most, no, not the most, because the private sector also does informally and formally. But I think the bill is good because, as he has just said, we are trying to mitigate. It is government coming back to the people, but on top of that, opening avenues like the digital space, because the digital space, for lack of laws, has not really been expounded on. It has been, like he has also said, we have been unable to touch base on that. And by opening it up, it also eases on other sectors, because there's a lot of money being made through, a lot of crazy money being made through the digital space that is not really tangible, but is there. We just need to get the caps. I think he's doing a good in the short term. Basically, like I saw they wanted they're introducing something to do with mitigating on how our parastatals are run, and it was also part of the blooming wage bill. So basically, I think government is doing what it's supposed to do. I mean, it is good in terms of we are not getting an outcry as you know, people who are crazy on the finance bill.
Yeah.
But now,
so this is a better approach.
Things are running, and some laws have to come in place. So basically, we needed the laws.
Okay.
And we have to have the laws, but they have to get them right. And I think this time he's got it right.
Okay.
Because it is a people-driven process.
Okay. Manasseh, is there a fair balance? What you see?
Trevor, I think there's a fair balance because, you know, government, and this happens every year, we amend the laws to cover or to bridge in on what we missed out the previous year. So, and Kenyans rejected the Finance Bill 2024. Yeah. So these amendments are necessary to bridge in on what we missed, because, you know, we cannot go back to amending the Finance Bill 2024. So the government, I think it's necessary to cover on what we've missed. So I think it's a fair balance because, you know, we need to raise revenues. We also need to service our loans. So it is very necessary at this moment that these laws are amended to cover or to bridge in on what we missed in the previous, in the Finance Bill 2024, the ones that we've been amending every year. You know, our tax regime is one that, you know, we've been amending income tax or finance bill year in, year out. So this time, it is the first time, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, that we've rejected a finance bill. And I think it is necessary and it's a fair balance. Yes.
But Robert, you know, there's an introduction of the significant economic presence tax to replace the digital services tax, which will essentially then increase the prices of taxi hailing apps, all these other services that everybody uses. So even as much as we're trying to reduce the burden on the employee, they're still going to spend more, because we know for sure that once that comes into place, it will always be passed to the consumer.
Absolutely.
So it is almost like a give and take. You give with this one and then you take with the other one. So how is that a fair balance?
Trevor, yes. Absolutely, there's still some bit of pain that is going to come through. And when you look at the proposed significant economic presence tax, they're increasing from 1.5% to 3%. Actually, what they had in the good thing is they had 6% in the Finance Bill 2024. Now, in this amendment, they are proposing to reduce that to 3%. So
it's double, basically.
So it's double what we've been charging. So that will definitely come down, because what happens is that as much as this tax is being imposed on multinationals, it is not being imposed on the locals who are providing the ride-hailing and all that. It's on the multinational. But what does it mean? Obviously, if I have to pay a certain amount of tax in Kenya as a multinational, I will also increase a bit of how much my prices and all that. And that eats into the margin of either the ride-hailing or the prices will have to be increased, which will then have to be borne by the final consumers. So there's a balance. and that will be there. But I think on the international tax front, what I would say is that this is happening globally, and when I look at what's happening in other countries, it is not unique to Kenya. The balance that the country has to strike is on the rate, and just making sure that this burden, if you intend this burden to be borne by the final service provider, who is a multinational, it doesn't then come down to the final consumer, because if that multinational is willing to pay the 3% without increasing the price of the ride-hailing and all these other services, it doesn't affect the local economy. So making sure that that burden is actually borne by the right person, not just being passed through, that you impose on me, but I pass through to everyone else, will be where the balance is.
Is there a way of drawing that balance in any way? Is it practical?
Yes, there should be.
It's very difficult because we are living in a free economy, so you cannot have price controls. That's the one thing that is there. One thing that would be what we have seen is in some countries, and at times it becomes a bit difficult. We've seen in Tanzania, they imposed a cap on the commission that a multinational can make, I think, on ride-hailing. And some of the multinationals are pulled out. I think Bolt pulled out or something in Tanzania, because they put a cap on the commission that they can actually make from your ride. Now, so from an economic perspective, there has to be a balance, and the government might have to use maybe more an approach of negotiating and discussing these players, such that the commission they take from the drivers is not increased. And so it's a balance, I would say so. But Trevor, you allow me to just point out one thing that I appreciate compared to what has been there. And I have noted, since we had the Finance Bill 2024, there's an change in approach in terms of how the government is looking at things and imposing new taxes. The first thing that we got even before we got the bill was an explainer in a newspaper. That is something that we've never seen. Just saying, these are the things we want to do. These are the things we are thinking. And I think when you look at what was happening before, the government was just, printing the bills and they give to the people. And any time we went to present some missions, and that is the issue that was there, is that the government was asking, if you tell us not to do this, tell us how to raise additional taxes. Now they are taking more of a different approach in terms of trying to win the trust from the citizens. So the approach they've taken on this one, I will agree, they have learned a bit from what happened last time, and they don't want a recurrence of that. But the balance has to be there. And I think the manufacturing sector, which I would say is probably the one which will be affected a lot, because indirect taxes affect a lot of the manufacturing sector. That's where the balance has to be, because as a country, we have seen a perpetual decline in the contribution of that sector to the economy. And it is the greatest employer in this economy. I mean, if you look at the service sector, it probably has one of the highest paid employees, but there are not many. But if you go to the manufacturing sector, it's labor intensive. So if you don't have a growth in this sector, and some of the taxes that we try to impose, like the eco-levy that was being proposed, we have excise duty or export and import promotion levies. We need to think about, before we impose these things, let's consider that we are in a global economy. So if you impose some levies in Kenya, and I'm competing with someone who is in Tanzania, Uganda, or any other country within Africa and beyond, and I'm supposed to export my goods to these same countries, there's no way I'm going to survive. So the levies, beyond the taxes, the headline taxes that we all know, the excise duty, VAT, and all that, the many levies that the government is trying to impose, they need to be looked at, because that's where the competitiveness of our economy might be lost. Because you may be looking at, yes, we don't have this many taxes, but the number of levies, railway development levy, import declaration levy, now we have the eco-levy that was being proposed, export. So we really need to be careful and work together with the industry players. Before we impose these levies, let's look at what the impact. Are we impacting our competitiveness? Are we going to have a loss in terms of manufacturing sector and all that? So there has to be a bit of a review of the levies and the fees, because that seems to be a direction that the government is looking at, and may not be very visible to very many people.
Okay. Yeah. And Jimmy, now looking at it almost from a political lens and a governance lens as well, yes, what should the government do now to almost change the perception that it's against its own people? Because this is not what the people expected. People expected a lot more relief. People expected a lot more of a Mwananchi-centered sort of approach. What they've seen so far is a bit of a push and pull from government and a bit of a top-down sort of conversation whereby this is what we want, this is how we're doing it. Yes. The government, the president himself has complained about communication, but is that the only place that they're lacking?
Basically, I think communication is the biggest problem, and so far I have seen a different approach. Government is talking with the people, not to the people. And the Gen Z issue brought a lot of issues there, but some of the positive, it had some positives because now we are understanding people in government. For once, we do not have bureaucracy. We are seeing PSs and the secretaries going out there and telling people this is what is happening. We are seeing them on your TV stations. So basically, the reality of the debt ceilings vis-a-vis what Wananchi expected is something we need to be understood, and everybody gets their collective share of the burden. So basically, it was the wrong approach we had was communication. And people understanding we are government and not vice versa. Everybody may look at the head of state and the executive as per se, and they think legislators just go to eat money. But there is a lot of stuff that is going there that people need to understand. Not all information, again, is public, but the major understanding of the public about the debt ceilings and our state of economy. We need a better approach, and we are doing, I think government should do it in a more robust way. Yeah. In fact, investing, even with our local people from, we have our local TV stations, our local, what do you call the podcasts and stuff like that. It should be part and parcel. We get out of the normal media and go back there because we need the people to understand. We are making this for you.
How much of this is to blame on the legislators themselves, the people's representatives?
It was the approach. It was the approach, and just like you said, they had reached a point where they were talking to the people. And the people rebelled. Just like what happened in Mount Kenya, for instance, under His Excellency, our former president. Yeah. He brought a proposal, but he did not discuss with the people. He brought it as his favorite. So now we need a very different approach, holistically, not only through the legislators, but also even our local leaders, our church leaders. Tax should be taught from down there. Something else that has come up is when we're doing the town hall meetings for collecting views, public participation, they should also start understanding public participation should be in two fronts. Number one, what they go collect on the ground. Number two, social media. Number three, our mainstream media. So that we have a whole holistic way of understanding the feeling of the people so that we understand how to move forward from point A to B. Yes.
Manasseh, what should the government do now? Because sometimes they say that they're locked between a rock and a hard place. But if the people don't understand what is so difficult about the decisions that they make, then they end up being on the receiving end, that the government is not serving their purposes, whereas in the truthful sense is that they had no choice. So what should they do now so that to carry the people on board going forward?
And Trevor, thank you for that. And as my friend has said, and the president said this on Friday when the deputy president was being sworn in, Kithure Kindiki. He said, I've been a lonely voice for over 2 years. Communicating government agenda should not even be the president doing that. This is something that we have a whole department in government to communicate the government policies, to communicate the government agenda, and basically inform Kenyans what the government is doing. And if you saw during, I think it was 1 or 2 years before the end of Uhuru Kenyatta regime, there was something which he used to say, Uhuru delivers. And one thing that we are happy about, even at this moment, if you say he did this and that, you can see the things he did. And with our current government, I think our main issue is how we communicate the government policies, is how we communicate the government agenda. And this should be an issue being taken up by every single person in government. to inform wananchi that this is what we are doing. And currently, Kenyans are very woke, if I can put it. You know, we are in a digital era. We are in an era of social media, that everything you do, we might, we say we joke too much. And sometimes they say if you live in Kenya and you die of depression, that is your problem, because we have a way of turning things in making a joke out of it. But these things are a way of communicating. You know, we can take a very serious thing and make it into a joke, but then it's a communication. So I believe that the government, what we need to focus on is informing wananchi that this is what we are doing, this is how we are doing, and we tried to get rid of the disinformation, because what most of the things that we are suffering from is how serious things can be turned into a joke. And this information actually basically is what we need to get rid of, and inform Kenyans that this is what we are doing, this is how we are doing, and this is how it's going to benefit you.
Yeah. Yes. Robert, you mentioned something interesting, that manufacturing, there's a decline in contribution towards taxation in manufacturing. Yeah. Is that because there's a lack of growth, or is it deliberate evasion of taxes?
Thanks, thanks, Trevor. Yes, so I would say it's a mix of things. One is taxes definitely are centering that, because one thing that we've seen is that the levies that have been imposed on various goods within the manufacturing sector, there are many. And what this means is that, we are moving from an era when Kenya was the only big player, let's say in East Africa. We are seeing people setting up industries in Uganda, Tanzania. So Kenya has been a big boy for a long time, and the manufacturing sector we have in this country is heavily reliant on exports to East Africa. So the increase in the price of goods because of these levies and the taxes and the flip-flopping nature of taxes, I think one thing that, and we are hoping, as much as we are saying this bill might be a bit moderate, the many taxes that are being introduced or the changes year in, year out is not a good environment for any business. And that is the reason we have the national tax policy, that we are saying they should be predictable. I cannot invest in a factory today thinking that, because I'll have projected the price of my goods. Then 2 years down the line, a tax is imposed on the same goods. So the predictability and the consistency and ensuring that we are able to plan ahead is an issue right now, because yes, the changes may not be many, but they might impact certain subsectors within the manufacturing sector. So taxes are there, and they contribute to that. The other thing is competitiveness, like I've said. Countries are getting more, they are moving in terms of their growth. So they're able to do some of the things that they may not have been doing there. So if we are again not able to be competitive enough out there, then it's an issue. So the bringing an enabling environment, the cost of power, the manufacturing sector has complained about the cost of power in Kenya being higher than compared to Egypt. I think if you see a lot of manufacturing companies, multinationals, have actually relocated to Egypt. Some of them have closed shop and they become distributors. So you close shop and you start exporting your goods to Kenya. And one of the key things they complain about is, one, the fact that our tax policies are not consistent. Do you plan ahead? Because in every business, you plan ahead. Yeah. So you cannot plan ahead today and then next year, 2 additional levies are imposed. Then I'm supposed to manufacture in Kenya and I want to export to a wider region because of economies of scale. I don't want to set up a factory in every country. So this thing of having new levies, new taxes every year is a problem that we must tame, at least by implementing the national tax policy. Then the other thing is supporting the manufacturing. The government has to go to the ground. They cannot sit on the office and expect that things are going to happen. They go to the ground. Let them listen to the manufacturers, because I have seen, for instance, they come. They have very elaborate sessions discussing their issues. They table them to the government, before the government. Some of them are taken into consideration, others are not. So really the government has to be at the forefront, because when you look at most politicians, they focus on infrastructure because that's what speaks to the common Mwananchi. A road there, a new hospital and all that. But these are the things that probably provide a lot of income to a lot of people in the country. Politicians don't focus a lot. They just want to see things on the ground. And that's why for instance, I think one of the things, Trevor, we should probably look at is the social contract. Because why are people feeling they are not happy paying taxes. It's because we are being, a lot of things are being put out in the media there, that a lot of incomplete projects. So the value for money is a big question, because I'll be very happy if I see my money being used very well. But that's the issue, the disconnect. I'm paying taxes, but all I'm seeing out there is the money being misused. Incomplete projects, things are not moving forward. So that's a bit of an issue that has to be worked on.
So at this particular point, from your perspective, what should the focus of government be right now? Because there's still continuing legislation, and like you talked about, unpredictability of taxation. There comes a point in everybody's life where you stop and think and restructure the entire thing. Which direction should they be taking now? Should we stop all ongoing projects? Should we complete the ones that were failing? What should they do? Or should we not start anything?
At all. Yes, thanks. One thing that I would hope is that the government should own up that in the past we have messed up, because I think it is not what I've been seeing in the social media. It's not fabricated. It's the reality on the ground. I think the government should own up. In the past, we have not done very well in terms of implementing projects to completion. And these incomplete projects, I heard the government saying they are instituting a commission to look into them. There should be a report on, we agree here we have failed, because I think the government stops at launching. You launch a project, a few things are done, a few months down the line, they disappear. There has to be ownership, that we cannot be saying, stop telling us about the expenditure side. They just say, you know, our tax to GDP ratio is below 25%. And that has been the talk, and I agree, we are below where we should be. But the expenditure side, we should also be seeing the same zeal. The government saying, yes, here we own up. It's not a case of the government telling us this is what we think. It has to also listen to the common Mwananchi and the people out there, because that's the reality, that we have messed up here, and this is what we intend to do with the additional taxes. We will correct this, and probably they even set up ways of communicating. Once these projects are complete, the local Mwananchi are seeing there, because they were meant to add value to the local communities. So owning up the expenditure side is where the government has to improve, so that we don't just focus on the revenue side. There's a disconnect. If you just tell me on income, and for me as a citizen, I'm concerned about what benefit are we getting as a country, then there's a misalignment. Yeah. So the disconnect between the two has to be worked on.
Okay. Jimmy, is the government biting more than it can chew? Restructuring too many things. You're restructuring the health system. You're restructuring the education system. Of course, anytime you bring in something new, there has to be challenges. But if you have too many challenges, then the perception is that you're failing.
The quagmire government has been going through is one. We, like you said, optics on projects done and not completed. Number one, for the last 2 years, government has not embarked on any major projects, development-wise, other than the affordable housing, which was also a continuation of something that was also happening. The previous regime over-borrowed for development. And that has been a very big quagmire, because after the regime left, for the country to restructure itself, to back and to understand, because most of even the concessional loans were breaking even in 2023, 2024. So government is not taking, government has to run on an agenda. Again, like social health, the SHA. The SHA is revolution in terms of digitally. And also, it is also helping in capping how much loss of revenue vis-a-vis how much loss of money we are doing in terms of things like capitation. What was happening is we were doing a lot of capitation for very many small, minute, we don't call them briefcase clinics, but that was something that was happening, and we're losing a lot of money there. For government to restructure, it had to get away from an old system to try and get, as he said, value for money, and on top of that, open the help basket, or rather open the basket in such that it can accommodate more people and more resources. The government restructuring on that value, I think it was a plus. On the education one, as I said again, information, optics, and communication is what is belittling most of those things, because I have not seen it not work even right now as we speak. comrades are still doing what is supposed to be done.
But they're complaining that there are bands that they don't.
Yes, it may take some time, which is normal for any new system. But in the long run, will we get those fruits? What was happening is, just like we have seen, like the taxes, the tax laws that are being amended right now, government has taken an initiative to get everybody outside there. Go tell people, let them understand. Most of those things that were done, nobody actually had time to. But even social health, you can see even doctors, you can see the PSs, the CS. Now people and the discourse, and people have slowly started understanding it. You've seen the noise has just gone gradually and gradually. It is not a topic for news. So basically, I think communication and also letting our people understand change is inevitable. We are moving we are a third world country, but we are one of the big boys in the third world countries. So we are moving, we are gliding towards the top, and we have to have changes that some we might not like. For instance, if His Excellency the President did not make some hard decisions, we would not be seeing some of the results we are seeing in terms of even the debt burden. Like I said, we are not in CRB, the world CRB. It is not a joke that we were able to do some of those things, because some of those loans cannot even be accounted for. Where they went, whoever took them, how they were used, the unfinished projects are the same. So basically, I think government is not taking too much. I think it is just making the hard decisions for a future. And again, we cannot stop because people are making noise. We need them to understand how to run in the system. Yes.
Manasseh, what should be the strategy of government going forward now?
Trevor, and I think borrowing from the question that you had asked him about, if the government is doing a lot. And I think what we have now is too much to do with too little time to do them. Because the government, as I'm meant to understand, or when William Ruto came in, he had a lot of things to address. Number one, you've talked about the social health. Number two, there's an array of things that he needed to do. And I think he has too little time to implement these things. So it's not a lot that he's biting more than he can chew, but these things need to be done. And as he has said, there are hard decisions that we have to make at some point. We need to move forward. So I think right now what the government needs to do is, the noise will be made about a lot of things. Many things will be said, a lot of things will be done, but what is good for the country? Are you implementing the agenda that you came in with? Are you implementing the issues that you had sought to address when you came in as an administration? If you are doing that, continue doing it.
Okay.
Noise will be made, a lot of things, but I think that we'll go back to the part of the communication. Are the people understanding that what you are doing is the right thing? Or propaganda will be made around that issue? If it is the right thing, continue doing it.
Now that you mentioned the matter of time, there's a proposal to increase their time in office to 7 years. Is that something that should be
that is a very interesting proposal by my friend Cherargei. He is a friend of mine. A lot of things have been said around that. I don't understand, or I don't know his thinking around that issue, but to my own
his thinking is exactly what you've said, that they needed time to settle and put things in order.
Trevor, governments come, governments go.
Yeah.
You have to live with that reality, that you will come and you will go. Implement the things you have within the time that you have. You don't need to increase your time limit. And I don't know why he made that proposal, but he has a right of his own as a legislator to make that proposal. Yeah. But I think the 5-year limit that is constitutionally provided is enough to implement. And as he said, I don't know if it was CPL, you have your own policies that there are those projects that were there ongoing. And I believe that you need to complete the projects that were there. You own up to the issues that were there in the other government. You do not come and change everything completely. Okay. So my belief is that the time is enough to do what you need to do. If you think it's not enough, go back to Mwananchi, seek for another additional 5 years and implement what you wanted, because these are policies that will carry on even after you leave office. Yes.
Okay. Robert, is this a matter of increasing time or increasing efficiency?
I would say it's more efficiency, because I think in terms of time, irrespective of how much time you are given, if you're not doing things the right way, things will still not happen. We need to look at, and the government should look at this from a long-term perspective. 5 years is a very short period of time. You cannot transform a country in 5 years. You can probably jumpstart it and put it in the right direction to transform in the next 20 or so years, but you cannot transform everything. What you've seen with this government, and I think that's why we have a lot of outcry, is that they have attempted, and they're attempting to transform the education sector. For instance, the university model, financing model, funding model. That's probably, they are saying it's informed by the fact that a lot of universities are bankrupt. They were not able to finance their operations. And they are trying to transform this and make it better. But I think they must also work with the common Mwananchi out there and listen to their complaints and understand whether this model is working, because those are the issues that, they have. I agree, as a government, you want to transform, but you are working for the people. So you have also to listen to them, and if there are adjustments that are required, a wise man accepts adjustments to their plan if they are not working. If it's the healthcare, they're trying to transform the healthcare. Again, it's a good initiative, but again, you must listen to the final consumers who are using these services. So I think it's a case of the government should look at a case of setting this country to a long-term trajectory where we are going to grow, but don't try to achieve everything within 5 years. Because, again, you are working with human beings who have feelings and they have needs. So if you squeeze them too much as you're trying to do a very good thing, they will still rebel. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Jimmy?
Yes.
You're talking about the issue of time. I saw you shaking your head.
I know, you see that one for Cherargei was, I think it was his own thinking. And that one is funny thinking, because it was at the wrong time. So it should actually not be a discussion, because that is not something anybody wants to hear.
Yeah.
As it is, Mwananchi is very tired with even the legislators they have. So time is should not be an issue, because they have been unable to talk to each other. They're talking at each other, and it was seen after the finance bill, and basically, so that is a non-issue. About the time frame, for every plan you have, there are steps. I want to remind you guys, CPA, when we were being moved from the digital from the analog to the digital. It happened, guys were told, and guys just thought, where am I taking, this TV? We used to have those traditional television sets, those ones, Mzee bought it and you cannot touch it. That thing was switched off one day on a 31st. Do we still have people with those things? And they don't work, it's impossible. So change and time are factors. We need to also understand that for anything to work, as much as you're saying the end consumer, sometimes the end consumer needs to get an answer. Once they understand, they understand like hard decisions, like I was saying. Now is when people enjoy the free digital space we have. That is why we have WhatsApp, TikTok. That is why we have content creators. Now those are the fruits. But if it was not done, if we allowed people to say no for now, we cannot keep procrastinating on issues. So I think what the government has done, and the agenda government has done, is it has laid out its agenda, it has laid out systems. Let us roll with them, because it has not done a by force policy. It is register, we move on. This other one is closed, sorry for now, but we need to move into this thing so that we also enhance. Like you were saying about the universities model. The end product and Mwananchi may not necessarily understand how you increase the capitation, or rather you increase the school fees, and at the same time we have been so used to systems that they look like they are a norm. We need to also understand that it is not a norm. We need to move with the times. For instance, you saw like Moi University had an issue. It was closed down or something like that. You have just talked about university being bankrupt. Universities have always had a notion of relying on the exchequer again. We cannot be relying. What the education model was doing, it was a wholesome process. Bring the dons there, bring the students there, bring the university, so that when we do the capitation, we are doing by individual head. not on the institution. Because again, we have had an issue where people are still charged.
Yeah.
They are still on help, but they are paying for other small. And the small services are not small, where you have a population of more than 10,000 people. So basically, we are not mitigating on anything. So we need to also understand the end product, who is me and you as Mwananchi, should also get the understanding. Sometimes it, like when we were growing up, there are things you were taught by force by fire. So not necessarily saying it was by force by fire. But today, you remember, if you were taught to give a handshake and bend, it really doesn't get out of your system.
Okay.
So it is getting off the norm.
All right.
We stop being rigid in terms of understanding and allow some processes. Because once they start, even NHIF was an issue when it started. Now we've gone, now people have been so used. What SHA, like, for instance, is doing, SHA is getting, Trevor, you make like half a mic. So you have been giving us 1,700 shillings. Mama Mboga was paying 500. But for you, with the level of let's say NHIF you'd get some better service. For instance, dental or something. There was something special about in NHIF about the public servants. They would even walk into Aga Khan, but who was paying for it? We are, what all these systems are doing is giving you your level of burden.
Okay.
So handle it.
All right, let's bring him some feedback really quick, and then I'll come to all of you for closing remarks. Just 1 minute each as we wind up on this conversation. And Babu Michael says, no matter how hard we fight and work out on better tax policies, but not really dealing with the budgeted corruption and scandals that keeps on robbing us billions, then we are doing nothing. We tax Kenyans more and get away with the money. That's zero work. Okay? Sir Nixon says taxation is the price which civilized communities pay for the opportunity of remaining civilized. But again, the taxes must be commensurate to the intended service, of course, with the absence of corruption and embezzlement and looting of funds. Okay? Remy says counties should grant youth more responsibility over budgets and policies by providing youth-led spaces for them and aggregate their preferences by directly allocating them budgets and advocate for the design policies with them. Okay? Mark Ruman says we don't have any problem with being taxed. What we want to see is our taxes being utilized well. Government is overburdening us with more taxes, yet we don't see any tangible development. Let them seal loopholes where public funds is being siphoned first. Bob Otieno says the government should talk the walk in order for Kenyans to feel and see the services they are delivering, because they are only keen on implementing of the policies without information of what they have done and currently doing. I mean, walk the talk. Dixon says, I disagree. Communication is not a problem. Anything good sells itself. Good company products, e.g. Safaricom services, sells with little effort. Remember, our president is the highest paid in the whole world based on our GDP. Okay. Manasseh, I'll start with you. Closing remarks really fast.
It's interesting because I've seen what the Kenyans' concern is. You know, you tell us one thing, we need to see it. And the main issue or the big issue that we've had is corruption, because I've seen Kenyans saying it is a budgeted corruption. And that is the main issue that we need to deal with. Close all the loopholes that siphon public funds, and we will be good to go. And I really want to commend the EACC, because as an advocate, I've been in the corridors too many times. And any case, and anyone will tell you, any case being brought in by the EACC, be sure, 90%, 99%, they'll close it on you. So I think that we just need to tighten the loopholes or the little loose ends so that we close on these issues. Okay. So I believe and I agree with the Kenyans who are saying that this is a budgeted corruption. So we need to finance our independent institutions to tighten those loopholes.
Okay.
Yes.
Robert?
The next, Trevor, I'll close with just 3 points. One is, I will iterate on the conversation, the balance between revenue and value for money conversation. There should be a balance. Let's not focus on just the revenue while everyone is complaining about value for money. Let the government be open on both the areas. The other thing is, this government is working on an economic model of bottom-up. Basically means you are working from the ground up. And we are saying we are moving away from the top down, where things were being done at the top and everyone is expected to feel the impact. And the last comment from a legislator who is in charge of budget, Bwana Didi Nyoro, he said something which is very important. It is not for the government to tell us that the economy is growing. It should be the common mwananchi down there telling the government we are actually feeling the impact of the economy growing. It is a very strong statement that he put out there.
Yeah.
And that would be my closing remark.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great. Jimmy?
For me, my closing remarks are, government needs to get systems of communications right. Let us be part and parcel of the story so that we can understand and so that people can understand. On the other hand, we also need to, as much as we are looking for value for money, let us also see value for our debt, because that is our biggest impediment. As much as institutions like EACC and doing all that, the biggest problem and systems of government is bureaucracy, government spending. In-house, per diems, whatnot, unless we cut on government spending, because government consumes also a big chunk of that money. We also need to understand our debt burden. We need that should be actually, before we get to value for money, we should understand where our shilling, if it's a shilling, how many cents is going to whatever. From that perspective, now we will see whether we're getting value for projects that have already been initiated and going forward.
Okay.
I think.
All right. Thank you so much for making time. Jimmy Gikwa, Youth and Governance Expert, CPA Robert Maina, Accountant and a member of ISPAC, and Tunen Manasseh, Advocate of the ICO. Thank you so much for making time for us this morning. That's where we leave the discussion for now. Coming up next is Level Up. Enjoy your weekend, people. My name is Trevor Ombija. It's always a pleasure having you with us right here on Citizen TV. And keep it here for the rest of your viewing. Bye for now.